Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, and it's time for me to do what I do best. Get unnecessarily mad about something that doesn't matter in a card game that nobody plays. Let's talk about the semi-limited list. So if you're unfamiliar with Yu-Gi-Oh, this may surprise you, but sometimes Konami prints cards that are just a little bit too good. Unlike our cousins in cardboard, Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, we neither have rotation nor alternate formats, and as a result, if a card is printed that is just a little bit too strong, we kind of have to live with it. The only tool in our arsenal when it comes to resolving these outliers is the ban list. Now, I assume the concept of a ban list isn't particularly alien. If you're playing Magic, Pokemon, or the Harry Potter TCG, you're probably familiar with it. What you might not be familiar with is a little idiosyncrasy that only Yu-Gi-Oh has. Of course, there's the banned section of the list. This is where the cards that cannot see play in any way, shape, or form are held. There's the limited section of the ban list, meant to keep individual cards to a singular copy, usually meant to stop cards that combo with themselves, are just too oppressive if you can wield two of them at once, or otherwise have idiosyncrasies that keep them in that position. But Yu-Gi-Oh has something else. A list under limited for cards that you can play 2 copies of, the semi-limited list. Now in Yu-Gi-Oh you can only play 3 copies of any given card already, so the semi-limited list doesn't do a lot to strategies. This has left its purpose kind of confusing. It tends to be a location where a significant amount of cards go that require a slap on the wrist, but Konami wants to be a little more delicate with the slap. The weirdness in ban list philosophy that the semi-limited list exemplifies is the subject of today's video. Today I want to interrogate, why is there a semi-limited list? The first reason is consistency. This is usually what people refer to when they describe the purpose of the semi-limited list. If a card was at 3 and is now at 2, it is slightly harder to find in your opening hand. If we pull up the hypergeometric calculator, we can see that any given 3 of has about a 34% chance to show up at least 1 copy in your opening hand. Slap that sucker on the semi-limited list and all of a sudden, that number dwindles to about 23. That's a pretty steep drop, especially when you're dealing with numbers that are already around a third. But is this preferable? Taking a step back from the obvious fact that putting a card from 3 to 2 does decrease the likelihood that you are going to open it, and therefore does decrease the power of the decks in which that card is usually found at 3 copies, is a consistency hit the best way to curtail a card's power? Let's think about a hypothetical. What if there's an individual card that if you find it in your opener reads, you win the game? And for ease of understanding, let's call that card Snake Eye Ash. You load into a game versus an opponent, open the card, reveal it to them, and they walk off cursing saying, "Oh my god, I can't believe I lost to that BS card." Well, great news for your opponent. The new list is out and this card has moved to 2. You don't have money for a new deck, so you unsleeve a singular card and roll up to locals with the exact same brew. And as luck would have it, you play the exact same player for round 1. You open your grip, and what do you know? You hit a 23% chance, reveal the card to your opponent, at which point they throw up their cards and say, "I can't believe I lost to it again. I've been sacked." And their response kind of makes sense, right? Let's think about that card in the abstract. Is it good that a card that says, "I win the game if I draw this," exists in any capacity? No. Making a card that's responsible for an unfair or extremely powerful interaction less available certainly makes that less likely to occur. But when it does occur, it is going to precipitate an extremely feels bad game state. Frequently one in which your opponent doesn't get to access their reserves of skill at all. You just win the game off of some BS interaction that the creators of the game obviously know is a problem, but don't take reasonable steps to stop. The important part of that card is the text on it, not the number of copies in your deck. If a gameplay loop is frustrating or unfair, it should be removed, not made less frequent. But consistency isn't the only reason that cards end up on the semi-limited list. They also occasionally show up for reason 2, repeatability. Cards in Yu-Gi-Oh are very accessible. There's a ton of tutors for everything under the sun, and some cards like Small World that literally tutor everything under the sun. As a result, sometimes your first turn combo can go through 2 or 3 copies of a singular card. In these situations, a semi-limit can be theoretically meaningful. Let me give you an example. A couple of formats ago, an Isold into Baron-centric Rescue Ace deck was a playable option in the top tier. That deck utilized the majority non-warrior Rescue Aces alongside a couple of warrior ones to go into the now banned Link 2. The non-warriors would be converted in a preliminary step to a warrior-type Link 2. And guess who fits the bill? SP Little Knight. You would go SP into Isold, and then later in the turn, go into another copy of SP because she was an integral part of the end board. Now, this deck occasionally played a third copy of SP, because if your copy of SP was outed on your opponent's first turn, and you'd used one to get to Isold, you kind of did need a third one in the back pocket in order to crack back. This is a scenario where even a hit like the OCG's nonsensical SP semi-limit might make sense. On paper. In practice, if something like this happened and was meaningful, those decks would just replace the first SP that's part of the combo with some sort of generic warrior link, a ferocious flame swordsman or something. While there are reasonable theoretical underpinnings for this justification, the truth of the matter is, it just doesn't really come up that often. Reason 3, Destiny Hero Malicious. Okay, so sometimes a card works in such an extremely specific way that it absolutely must be on the semi-limited list. Case in point, Destiny Hero Malicious. Destiny Hero Malicious is a 6-star monster, which can be banished from the graveyard in order to summon a Destiny Hero Malicious from your deck. This card's really, really strong, and has been the backbone of a number of unfair strategies throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history. If you normal summon a card like Vision Hero Vion, you can send a Destiny Hero Malicious, banish one to get another, link off for a 2, and then summon a third Destiny Hero Malicious from deck. It turns out it's not actually okay to get 3 materials worth of link summons off of one singular card. However, you can't put this card to 1, because if you do, it can't banish itself to summon another Destiny Hero Malicious, because there is not another Destiny Hero Malicious. So what do? Well, sometimes paths converge in such a way that a card like this kind of has to exist at semi. As an alternative example, Pearly Sleepy Memory is currently on the list for a similar reason. My Friend Pearly allows you to reveal 3 Pearly cards from your deck and randomly add 1 to your hand. If you can just reveal Sleepy, 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 you can guarantee it over the course of your combo. But if it's semi'd, you have to get a little more creative. Maybe you're forced to search it earlier, or maybe you're forced to go Sleepy, Sleepy, Leap in case you accidentally whiff. Really corner case scenarios, but decent in terms of justification for the list's existence. Reason 4, it's a holding facility. Frequently, when a card is removed from the ban list, it doesn't go immediately from 0 to 3. Usually, it will be reintroduced to organized play by way of a limit, and then if nothing happens while it's limited, Konami will reassess. Now, they really do not like immediately moving a card from 1 to 3. Sometimes a card that's fine at 1 is absolutely not fine if you're allowed the full playset. So they sneak it back in just a little slowly by putting it in the semi-limited list. Then the next time the FNL rolls around, they move it down one more time if it's okay. The reasoning for this is pretty solid. It gives them a little bit of time to course correct if it turns out the card is actually just a little bit too good, and the damage that the card can do is pretty minimal if you're only getting 1 additional copy. In fact, this type of semi-limit is so common in the TCG that at this point we just recognize it's part of the process in terms of a card coming back. And finally, reason 5, hints. I'd never heard this justification for the semi-limited list until it was voiced on Twitter the other day. In response to the OCG's list, which semi-limits SP Little Knight, a card that people usually play at exactly 1 copy, one user chimed in to let people know that in fact, this was a coded message from Konami. Because no region gives justification for movement on the ban list anymore, this was Konami's way of letting players know that SP Little Knight, an incredibly expensive card, was shortlisted to be hit on a future ban list. That if you have a bunch of copies, you should start piecing them out now. This is insane. And the frustrating part of this is that I think it also might be completely true. Why else are you semiing that card? I have no idea. So that exhausts the reasons for why the semi-limited list exists at all. For most of my time playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I've been a staunch semi-limited list abolitionist. I think it's really weird that we have a list that mostly just serves to make the game a little more sacky, but not 1 iota more fun. But I hope you can see some of the justifications for why the list exists in the first place. In my opinion, the weird corner case scenarios of cards like Destiny Hero Malicious and Pearly Sleepy Memory and the holding facility does make sense. I don't buy any of those other ones though. That's it. Bye-bye.